Hello, everybody. My name is Tim, and today I'm going to be telling you all a personal story from my childhood. So I hope you all enjoy. Okay, let me take you guys back to fifth grade. I was 10 years old at the time and enrolled at a super strict K through 8 private school. Now, this is the type of school where a uniform was required, as well as proper English, proper manners, proper respect, or we'd all suffer the consequences. Now, at the time, I was the model student, the type of kid where teachers would say, "Hey, why don't you be more like that guy?" And pretty much a goody two shoes all around. I never had a run in with the principal, I never had any disciplinary issues. But all that changed when I decided to rebel a little bit. And that's where my friends Chasen and Michael come into the story. Now, one February morning, afternoon, I noticed that Chasen and Michael were having an intense conversation. I began to listen in and realized it was about football. It was about the big upcoming Super Bowl game. So I began to listen in, and then they invited me to join the conversation to solve their dispute. On one hand, Chasen was very adamant that the Carolina Panthers were going to win the Super Bowl game, but Michael was sure that the Denver Broncos were going to win. They asked me to solve it, and me knowing very little about professional football, only about college football, I just said the first thing that popped into my mind. I wanted to fit in. I didn't know anything. So I said, "Hey, the Denver Broncos are going to kill them." And Chase was very upset that I sided with Michael instead of him. He said, "Why don't you put your money where your mouth is?" I told him to name his number. And us fifth graders decided on the number of $150. Now, it might not seem like a lot of money now. It's probably like one shift for a lot of us at work, but at the time, this was a lot of money in fifth grade. I did not have $150. I was not going to ask my parents for $150. And all around looking back on it, there's no way I was going to pay that money if I lost. But that didn't stop the bet from spreading across the whole school. Each grade was knowing about this bet. Kids were picking sides, but we all agreed to keep it within ourselves for fear of teachers and parents finding out. That's the last thing we wanted to happen. So the day of the big game arrived, and I was actually kind of getting a little nervous. I didn't know what was going to happen. I definitely didn't want to lose this game for fear of what would happen. So the Denver Broncos ended up winning. The team I had very little knowledge about. They ended up having a decisive victory over the Carolina Panthers. And I was ready to go into school that Monday morning with my head held high, acting like I was some sort of NFL guru. Well, that was to everyone's surprise when here comes Chasen walking down the hallway with the $150 in his hand. He even had more money that he made with side bets from other people. He paid all of his debts, which was to everyone's surprise. And I was very excited, very joyful, until I hear a little voice out of the corner of the room and said, "Timmy, can you step outside with me for a second?" It turns out kids are very untrustworthy and they can't keep their mouths shut. Who would have thought, right? So I walk outside and I begin to find out that a fellow classmate of mine named Ridge went home after the bet was done, and without hesitating told his mother the entire story about how I made a bet, $150 with another classmate about the big game, and she was so disgusted that fifth graders were gambling on football that without hesitating, she grabs her phone out of her pocket and phones the principal, tells her everything, that I was gambling and that this needed to be taken care of. So I walked my way down to the principal's office, very scared, ready to deny the whole thing because I was rebelling, right? I walk in there, I open the door, I see the school principal and the school psychologist just standing there with disappointed looks on their face, but without even paying attention to that. I began to think of what my parents were going to do. My parents were super strict, and I was very scared of what the repercussions were going to be. And the next thing I knew, I was bawling, tears were falling. They had a puddle below me. And at that point, they didn't even care about what they were going to say to me. They just tried to get me to stop crying. They told me that they called my parents, that they were aware of the situation, and that everything was going to be okay. And now I've learned my lesson, basically. In the end, I got off very easy. All I had to do was return the money. The other kids, they didn't get off as easy as me, but I got off easy. But I was still fearful because my parents were looming. So I get home, and as I was picked up by my grandparents that day, I get home and I find out that my parents found humor in the entire thing and that the fear was all in my imagination. Now, there's a lot of morals that someone can take from this story. Don't be gambling as a fifth grader. Don't gamble money that you don't have. There could be dozens of morals that you can take from this story. I would simply say, be in the present moment. That's what I learned. Be in the present moment, and don't be fearful of what might happen in the future, because it leads to anxiety. So I hope you all enjoyed this story of fifth grade Tim. Thanks for listening.